Hi, welcome to Forever Wild, a podcast about family, memory, and the stories that shape who we become. I'm Meagan McGovern, the oldest of four sisters.
And I'm Nora again, the smartest of the four sisters.
Right.
Together, we're sharing our being growing up with an actor father, a mother who didn't think the roles applied to her, at least financially, and a childhood full of chaos, adventure, and unforgettable moments.
You know, I wasn't really okay with labels until like the whole smartest thing, so forget it. Each episode, we tell stories about our childhood and we dive deep into how we're shaped by our past and how siblings who come from the very same family can see their past in very different ways.
Thank you for joining us. This is Forever Wild.
Okay, so Nora had an idea, which I think is kind of fun, to talk about what we're doing in our lives every week so that you can kind of see where we are now versus where we were then. So, Nora, why don't you start and tell me what you're up to?
Well, so this week, it's a normal week for me. I work from home, I work remotely, and it's one of those weeks where like the most exciting thing that I do is figure out what I'm having for lunch at home.
Huh.
I had a great like turkey on rye sandwich with some missions. We're doing something that David introduced me to. It's called a budget for the family, which is horrifically awful. Not a big fan of that. And, I'm working. We have, we're planning graduation parties. Charlotte's graduating in a couple of weeks, couple months in May. And we're planning graduation parties. We're planning prom house. We're planning prom hair. It's all of the exciting things that go along with having a senior. So that's the exciting life in my life in Houston, Texas this week. All the normal things I never thought I would get to experience.
Well, I've had 3 seniors so far, and we've never done prom hair or prom dresses.
Never done prom hair.
Well, no, got 3 boys. They've never done prom hair. So
prom hair is so fun. Like watching Charlotte and her friends like experiment with what they're going to do and like going through the TikToks and the Instagrams and the pictures. And what do you think of this with this dress? And it's such a fun thing that I never in a million years would have been like something that I would be excited about, but it's really fun. I mean, considering my dress for prom was something that little Maggie had sent me in the mail to help head. And I did my own hair and I did my own makeup, the big black eyeliner on top, like the nude lipstick with a red dress that was too big for me because her boobs were so much bigger than mine at that time. And that was my prom dress.
Well, from my prom, I went to a hairdresser and I had them put my hair up into a French twist. And I got black sequins put onto the back of my hair with glue. I had a big black dress. So I don't know why I got a prom and a prom dress and a French twist and all that, and you didn't. But I don't know, man.
My prom life was very different. I was living in the Hilton Head with Katie and her.
Oh, well, yeah.
And time.
Yeah, I mean, 6 years is a big difference.
Yeah, it was a big difference in that time.
And the other thing is that with my boys, we're just such geeks. So by the time my kids were seniors in high school, they had finished 2 years of community college and they were kind of ready for college and going to take a gap year. And they were not into the whole senior year thing or prom or any of that. And I mean, they went out and they did stuff with their friends and we had a graduation party, both of them, but there was no prom. So anyway.
And do a prom house where you like rent a house for 25 kids.
Oh my God.
On a week. And you guys all like, oh no. Yeah. It's going to be so fun.
None of that. So what are we doing this week? It's a regular week here. My oldest, Sawyer, is getting ready to move cross country for a job. He's going to be a park ranger in Kentucky for the summer at the Abraham Lincoln birthplace, which kind of is interesting. It's the old log cabin where you hear the stories about Abraham Lincoln being born in a log cabin. He's going to be there.
So I saw you post something about that, and I thought Abraham Lincoln was born in like Illinois.
So did I.
It's a nice way. Sometimes you post a lot. I don't read.
No. Well, when Sawyer said, I'm going to go to Abraham Lincoln birthplace and it's in Kentucky, I said, no, it's not. It's in Illinois. And he's like, no, I know who offered to hire me. They're in Kentucky. And I said, Sawyer, Illinois is the land of Lincoln.
It's a scam. You're being scammed.
Well, apparently Illinois has a better marketing campaign. That's where Lincoln lived and worked as a lawyer. But he also lived in Tennessee and Kentucky. And he was only in Kentucky for a couple of, until he was 8. But the log cabin was there and his whole family was there. So I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to go out with him in April to help him get set up because, again, this is something different on your end. Sawyer's 24 and he's never had a car. So
Good Lord.
he's going to go buy a car when he gets there. And it's going to be a big
Never had a
deal.
snowfire?
No, he's never had a car.
Huh.
Okay. How old were your kids when they got cars?
Charlotte was 15 when she got her car. And Emily was actually almost 17 because she was not, it was after the pandemic and she was just not a big
Right.
kind of driving. Yeah, Charlotte was raring to go from the time she was 13 and we just happened to get my mother-in-law's car. So it worked out well.
No, we've always, right? Neither one of the boys needed a car in college. One was because it was in a small town in the middle of nowhere and there was no place to drive to.
Huh.
And the other one is in Washington, D.C., where he can get around everywhere. And so since they didn't need cars for college, there was no point in buying them one or helping them get a car in high school.
Makes sense.
And so this just never happened. And Sawyer's been out of college 2 years now, and he hasn't had enough steady work to justify having a car payment. And I don't want to pay his car payment for him. And I don't have $10,000 to give him for a car or whatever. So he just hasn't had one.
I'd like to revisit me talking about a budget and why I'm poor because my children have cars that I paid for in cash.
Exactly.
The money.
So, I mean, we're going to go get him a car and it's kind of a big deal. We're going to fly down there together and then he's going to have a car and then we get to drive back because the job, you can only work for 6 months at a time for the Park Service. And so the job will have to be over in October. And then we get to drive back from Kentucky and I get to do a road trip, which will be really fun.
Huh. Okay, not to get you off track. Why can you only work 6 months for the Park Service?
Because
the educational version of Forever Well today, first of all.
Yes, it is. Because it's seasonal work and there are two kinds of federal government jobs. And the one that is getting cut everywhere is real federal government jobs that are usually fantastic middle-class incomes that have, decent benefits and you can buy a house and you can live somewhere. And that is kind of the staple of a lot of middle-class families is a good government job. But the ones that are seasonal, where you just work at Yellowstone as a park ranger for 6 months or whatever, it's kind of like the equivalent of you don't get insurance unless you hit 32 hours a week or something. This is the same thing, where you're not an official federal employee unless you work more than 6 months a year. So you can only work 6 months a year as a park ranger job, but you can do it every year for 6 months. Then you find something else to do in the winter. So I don't know what he's going to do this winter. He's obviously eventually looking for a real job, but this is kind of fun in the meantime.
All right. Well, I like that little weekly catch up. Thank you for humoring me. And I hope that was interesting to two people who listen to this. One, my friend Nicole in California. So thank you. Appreciate that.
I have somebody who said she listens to this on the treadmill because it keeps her from having panic attacks with everything that's going on. And I'm like, I don't know that I'm the voice of reason.
Run. You can do it. You can do it.
I don't know. I'm the person who, calms you after a panic attack.
Well, we're going to induce panic attacks.
Well, Sawyer said the other day, he's like, you are exactly the kind of person that people turn to in a crisis. I don't know what you're talking about, dude. I don't know any more than anybody else.
Depends on the crisis.
So anyway, I think we should go back to storytelling today a little bit and go back to where we were in our story. And
what they want.
When we last left you, we were in our new house that we had bought with money from the game show. And this was from 1982 to 1985, 1981 to 1985. It was the longest we ever lived in one house when I was a kid. And we moved in when I was in 10th grade and we moved out right before the beginning of my school year. And this was the house Nora had talked about, how we fixed it all up. And it was a cool house. And it was in Northridge, California. Now I'm sure it's a $3 or $4 million house. Right in the middle of a great neighborhood in LA. Huge, big houses. And just a really neat place to live. And we were pretty happy there. I mean, do you remember that house?
I love that house. Out of all of the houses I've ever lived in, that was my favorite house. I love that house. So when we moved in there in 1985, I guess when we left there, I was 10. So I moved here from the time I was 7 or 8 till I was 10. The girl next door was my best friend. She was a couple of years older than me. She went to Ellen Baptist School. She was like my best friend. It was just a really good place. Like, it was great for me to be around them because they were so stable. Like, her mom was best friends with Annette Monticello. And so, like, the most traditional, normal family, they were Christian. They went to church every Sunday. Her dad was just the nicest guy in the world. Mark, hey Mark, hey Michelle. Love them. Still talk to them. Still text on with Michelle on Facebook, and it's just I adore them, and it was just a really good time.
It's funny because, this whole thing started when we talk about the house fire and about, my dad leaving, our dad leaving and everything. That was when I was 10. And I have such kind of vague memories of that time. And it's all kind of fuzzy. And my memories don't become really clear till, 13, 14, 15. And I think of, this house and you only being 10 there. And you were still little.
Yeah, I was little, but I was like a very early bloomer. Like, this is the house where I started smelling bad when I didn't wear deodorant.
Okay.
This is
Yeah.
the house where I got my first hair in my nether region, that one of Katie's friends, Tyra, that we're going to talk about, convinced me that there was something wrong with me and I needed to go to the doctor because it was not normal to have hair down there.
What the hell? She's older than,
She was joking with me. She was like messing with
Oh,
yeah, she was joking with me and trying to
okay.
make me panic attack. And I
I thought maybe she didn't have any hair down there or something. I was like, I didn't know that.
for about 30 minutes, she and Katie went really hardcore on me. And then with a point when I was like hysterically sobbing in the corner, they're like, Nora, we're just messing with you. It's fine. It's normal. It's a perfectly normal thing that happens. It's puberty's happening.
See, this is the thing I'm surprised you didn't come to me with, because I would have been like, look, kids.
This is where I remember we had that weird hot tub and like Katie and Tyra like taught me how to shave my legs in the hot tub. And again, back to Trisha and her mom next door. Like, I remember walking by her mom one day. It was the middle of summer, and I must have smelled like a goat because I walked by and she's like, "Someone forgot to put their deodorant on today." And I was like, "No, I was supposed to wear deodorant. I'm only 10." Like, I had no idea. And mom never talked to us about that kind of stuff. Mom's personal hygiene at that point was not something that that any of us would want to replicate, right? Like, she was in a really bad situation at that point, like mentally, and she was depressed. And I think there was a lot of, this is the first time I remember her ever being like in her bed, not getting out, or being like in a staying nightgown and not getting out of bed for a long time, not showering on a daily basis. I remember
not washing clothes, not doing
right.
dishes. All of
This
that,
is when, like, if you wanted clean clothes in our house, you had to wash your own clothes, put them in the washer, in the dryer. Don't leave it alone because someone will throw it in the floor and a cat will piss on it, and then you're going to school smelling like cat piss. Right. So it's every man from his house.
But if you waited long enough, mom hired a housekeeper and a landscaper, and they moved in with us for a while.
And then they
lived it. Right.
Right. But I was always the kind of like, I know what I want to wear in school tomorrow. I have to have my perfect outfit out. Like, I need to wash it. And I started doing laundry. I mean, my own laundry, I think, when I was like 8 years old, or else I wouldn't have clean clothes.
Yeah, I just didn't have clean clothes, and I didn't know about deodorant. And somehow I missed all of those memos. I mean, I think finally when I was in 10th or 11th grade, there were a couple of girls. I always remember one girl that I went to school with. Her name was Heather. And it's kind of funny. I am not good at direct, honest communication. And it's something that I think that should be taught in schools. I wish everybody could go up to somebody and say, hey, you smell bad. You need to fix it. That's why people don't want to hang out with you, instead of what we do now, which is dance around people. But the girl came up to me and she said, hey, I really like you and I want to be friends with you, but you wear the same jeans every day. And the other kids are all talking about it. And they say that you wear the same jeans like 3 or 4 times a week. And I just want to know why that is and what's going on, so that like I can tell them, so that they don't make fun of you and so I can be friends with you.
Well, I love her. Good for her.
Well, I know it was kind of, I don't know if she was that direct about it, but it was something very clear about, hey, the other kids are talking about your jeans. Why don't you fix it so that, anyway, I thought it was a really neat thing. And ever since then, when I see a kid who is on the verge of being on the out group, I mean, I can't go up to kids and say that, but I think it's a good thing to say to somebody that, hey,
can you just like write them a note, slip in their pocket?
Well, and my kids hate it because I am this direct, but I will walk up to the boys and say, you stink.
Yeah.
You stink. They're like, what the hell? You can't. Yes, I can. Go take a shower. If I can smell it, other people can too. Your hair is greasy. Yeah. Go take a shower. And they don't like it. But I think it's better that I tell them that than that somebody else does.
I think it's harder with girls to have those conversations. And I mean, and I do say, I do not ever remember having any of those conversations with mom. Like, mom, I don't remember mom ever teaching me about deodorant, about tampons, about pads, about nothing like that. I remember very specifically, like, Katie and her friend Charlotte teaching me about tampons. I remember Katie and Tyra teaching me about shaving my legs. I remember Trisha's mom teaching me about deodorant. I don't remember a lot of that type of thing from mom.
Yeah, I didn't have those kind of friends, and so I didn't get the memo on any of that, I guess. I don't know. I guess I've not having older sisters worked badly for me, you know?
I have three older sisters, and I mean, I don't, Morgan, I learned a lot of stuff just from glomming onto her because she was so pretty and she knew how to do makeup and she knew hair. So I would just, follow her and do what she did. But you
Yeah.
never, we were 6 years apart, and the difference between 16 and 10 is a big difference at that point. You don't want to be around a 10-year-old sister. You were busy with your friends and trying to have your own life.
It just never occurred to me, I don't think, to talk to you about stuff like that. I mean, we were close, I think, as close as a 16-year-old and a 10-year-old can be. I liked you. I read books to you and stuff, but it never would have occurred to me to talk to you about stuff like that.
Well, it's your fault that I smell like a goat. So thank you.
Yeah, well, there you go. Um,
So let's talk
so
about some things that you were talking about that I was kind of curious about. Talk a little bit about how poor we were at that point. And I know that this kind of happens. Sorry,
so
getting ahead of ourselves. You
no, well, so this is kind of another of my mom's things, and it makes her sound like a bad person. And this gets into some family stuff that I don't know how deep into family stuff I want to go. But I mean, at some point, my mother always used her father and her brother and my father for income. There was any time or an insurance scam or insurance checks, but there was never a steady source of income. But once we moved into this house that she bought with money from the game show, her father helped her with it somehow. And I don't know whether he was helping her with the mortgage payments or whether she made the down payments. He was making the mortgage payments. It doesn't matter. He was helping her somehow, and he was on the deed somehow. But he got remarried. Her mother had died a few years back, right before she was on the game show, and my grandfather got remarried, and the new wife did not like my mother being involved with him financially, because who wants to be involved with my mother financially? I mean, it's always a
not
drain.
me.
It's always a suck. There's nothing. And a single mother, 4 little girls. She's living in what, a 4,000 square foot house with a maid and a housekeeper, or I mean, a housekeeper and a gardener. And it was a mess. And I know that my mother had credit cards in grandpa's name, and she kind of cut all that off. The new wife did, which I do not blame her for, but mom did blame her for, and mom was very vocal and very angry about it. And I think the expectation was, again, that she was going to go get a job, and that didn't happen. And so all of a sudden we're in this big house and there's no money coming in again. And I think it's possible that the mortgage payments were being made, but that was it. There was no other money at all. And so my mother decided to move. And for whatever reason, we decided to move rural Oregon. I don't remember why. There must have been a deal on a house. And there was some kind of scam associated with us selling the house, that my mother did something where, she sold the house for $60,000 more than she had a loan out for. And she took the $60,000 in cash and didn't give it to her father, or I don't even know how it worked. There was a scam involved. And we left to Oregon, and we were supposed to have that $60,000 in cash, and it didn't work out. And I think she got $5,000 in cash, and we ended up going my senior year. I had been at a great school at the Bus Hampton Zoo. I don't know if I said this before, but I went to a fantastic school for 10th and 11th grade. And it was a school for the highly gifted. Haha, smartest one. And it was a school where you went to the LA Zoo for 4 classes a day. And so like in 11th grade, I was taking vertebrate physiology, physical anthropology, genetics, and zoology. And it was an amazing school where you literally would go out and study orangutans and elephants. And I had very good friends, and I had been there all of 10th grade, all of 11th grade, was very much planning to go back for my senior year. I went to Houston for 3 or 4 weeks to visit my aunt and uncle. And when I got back from Houston, this was August of 1985, you guys were gone and had moved to Oregon. I got back to LA, but I don't know how you guys got in the car, who you rode up to Oregon. Well, okay, so here's the thing with the ride to Oregon. And when I got back, I was 16. I had turned 16 in April. So when we got back in August, I had one of my mom's friends, Kenny, was our helper. He was there, and he picked me up from the airport. He said, your mom moved to Oregon, and she took Katie and Nora and Morgan with her, and Katie's friend Tyra. Because at that point, Katie's friend Tyra lived with us. So if I was 16, Katie was 14, Tyra was 14. And I don't know if Tyra was going to go up there forever or if she was just going to go up to visit. They all went up there. And he said, you're in charge of the animals and you take your car and go up there. And so I went to the empty house, grabbed, I think some of my stuff was packed. This was again, Mom screwing me over. I don't know where my clothes were. I didn't know what had gotten packed and what hadn't, but I grabbed whatever I could or whatever was left. I put it in my car. And my best friend at the time, her name was Susie, was staying with us on and off because she had a really abusive family and she was in a bad situation. And she asked if she could come up to Oregon with us to visit or check it out. And I said, yes. But when she left, her mother said, don't come back. If you go up with them, don't come back. And Susie said, was that okay? And I said, I mean, what are your other options? If you're getting kicked out, you're getting kicked out. So come on up. So we also took a friend of ours. I don't even remember how he got involved. A guy named Lester, who was like a family friend of a family friend who was also our age and who was 17. He got in the car. So now we got 3 teenagers all coming to Oregon with me. And we had to take a mother cat with 4 kittens, a dog, and a chicken named Belina.
Oh, Belina.
And Susie's gerbil or hamster or something.
I remember Belina.
And we had all of these animals. And Oregon is far. I mean, it's a hike from LA. You think it's close, but it's not.
Yeah, on the map, it looks super close. It is not.
It's 16 hours, 14 to 16 hours. So I know we did it in 2 days. And we had to stay at a hotel one night. And, we couldn't leave the chicken in the car. We couldn't leave the cat and the mother cats and the babies in the car. We had to take all of the animals in the hotel room, and the cat's eating the chicken, the cat's trying to eat the gerbil. And we, of course, didn't have a cat carrier. I think we had a cardboard box. And Lenny is this weird guy that we didn't know very well. And I can't remember what he was doing or why he was coming with us to begin with.
Was it Lenny or Lester?
No,
it was Lenny.
Lenny. Yeah. Lenny was
Lester. It was Lenny.
So Lenny was not somebody that either Susie or I was remotely interested in romantically. This was literally just a guy. And I don't remember what he was doing there. But on the ride up, okay, remember, I am 16 years old. I have had a driver's license for 4 months. I got a ticket doing 88 miles an hour. And we got pulled over. And fucking chicken jumped out of the car. And I'm chasing the freeway, chicken down the side of the freeway as the cop is like wondering whether to arrest me or kill me. And the cats are in the back seat. And he's like, what is this madness? What are you doing? I'm like,
I don't know.
I'm moving from LA to Oregon. He's like, why are there only 3 teenagers here? What's with the animals? I'm like, I'm moving my mom's animals. I don't know. He's like, you get up to Oregon and you tell your mother that 88 miles an hour in a shitty ass car is a terrible thing for a 16-year-old girl you've been driving for 6 months. And why do you have all these animals? And you get up and you just tell your mother. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll tell her that. And
well, I appreciate you rescuing Belina. Belina was my house chicken, named after the Wizard of Oz Part 2.
She became a house chicken when we got to Oregon because when we got to Oregon,
she was a house chicken in California too.
Was she? Okay.
Yeah, she was my house chicken.
Did she just shit all over the house?
Yeah, it was terrible.
What the fuck was wrong with you? Why did you have a chicken in the house?
No, I don't know. But I loved Belina. She was so.
She never had like a coop or anything? You just let her run around the house?
I think she had like a little cage outside, but for the majority of the time, she was in the house.
Oh my God. Oh my God. I mean, I kind of remember you called her a house chicken, but I didn't remember that she actually just wandered the house pooping.
Oh, sorry. I cleaned that. I mean, the best that like a 10-year-old can clean up chicken shit in the house.
It was bad.
This is why I should not have been unmarried or left without a mother who didn't keep an eye on me. Because I'll get a house chicken.
So we got to Oregon and it was just a disaster. And I know you don't remember a lot of it.
Well, I remember Oregon. The house And it's funny, I actually drove by there about 15 years ago. We went up to the house, up to the driveway of the house. I remember exactly how to get there. So the house was, you had to go up a really long driveway. And the driveway was probably half a mile long.
And
It
it's
was through a
really,
wood,
really steep.
really steep through wooded forest.
Right.
And you have to like go up, and it's outside of Medford, Oregon, this little tiny town called Ruch, Oregon, Ruch. And you have to go over this bridge that is like through this beautiful river.
Over the
And then you
Rogue
go up
River. Rogue
over
River
the
is gorgeous
river.
there.
And it was unbelievable. And you go up this winding driveway, and then up there's like this huge pasture. And at the top of the pasture, there's this beautiful house. It's this big wooden, beautiful house, brown. And then off to the left, there's a barn. And it's just behind it, it's just forest. It's forest everywhere.
And it
And it
looks
was
like, it looked like something out of Architectural Digest from the 70s. One of those log cabins with huge porch and a big A-shaped roof, but with glass front. I mean, just spectacular house that
it was gorgeous.
anybody would love to live there. And it was very 70s macrame vibes, kind of like,
But it's so remote that, look, when David and I went by there about 15 years ago, actually when we were driving up to visit you, Dave and I swung by there with the girls so I could show them it. And there were signs everywhere about keep out, militia nearby. Like that's how remote it was.
Well,
Like it's the Oregon militia lived there.
right. It
So
was out
not a
in the
good
middle of
place
nowhere.
for a woman and 4 kids.
So, well, here's the thing. All right. So it was the four of us, plus Susie, plus Tyra, plus Lenny.
But Lenny.
So that's 7 teenagers. I mean, you were 10, but essentially 7 kids between 10 and 16. And we moved there with no money and no plan and no job. And we had really shitty cars. So there was not a lot of way to get around.
You want to hear something terrible though?
Yeah.
When we got to the house, and I had Moofy in the car with me because Moofy was like my cat. When we opened the door to get out of the car, we got out of the car to go in the house for the first time right when we moved there. Moofy ran off into the woods and I never saw her.
You're misremembering that. It was Timmy the dog, and I wasn't going to bring it up.
No, Timmy was at the next house. Timmy the Airedale?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. I remember every animal I've lost. You want to talk about tragedy?
No,
Yeah.
I don't want to talk. People are going to hate us. I don't want to talk about lost dogs. I don't want to talk about lost animals and lost dogs. Those
Okay.
are real tragedies, but I don't want to, that's like, no.
Anyway, Moofy, after all that shit about keeping the cat in the car the whole way up,
Yes.
Moofy went off into the woods as soon as we got to the
Because
house.
I remembered something about Timmy, and I think it was the same scenario.
It was the same. It was the next house in Oregon. Timmy ran off into the woods and
I mean, we had no right having animals, but
it was horrific.
so when we first started school there, so 2 weeks into this, I had to start school. This was my senior year, and I had grand plans of going to college. I was going to be an archaeologist, preferably an underwater archaeologist, diving on wrecked ships. This was my thing. And I did not have great grades in high school because I did not know that I had ADHD. And also because, like, when I would get home at night, there was no concept of doing homework or having a backpack or having papers and pens or anything. I am adamantly against homework for public school kids because of this. Because I think that homework is designed to set up poor kids and kids from chaotic families to fail. But I wanted to do well, and I had the highest PSAT score in 11th grade in my school, and I was set up for a scholarship, so I wanted to do this. So we went to the local high school, which was Medford? I don't remember
It
what.
was Medford High School.
Medford High School. Medford High School was 44 minutes from the house. So you and Morgan went to an elementary school?
To elementary school, and we rode the bus. And there was a whole thing about the bus because the bus like had service originally, and then it stopped service
Yeah.
right after.
So here's the thing. It stopped service right after we started because they got rid of a stop or something.
Right.
And Katie and Tyra went to the middle school, and Lenny and Susie and I all went to the high school. I don't know how Lenny ended up living with us. I mean, really, I don't have any idea how he was there, why he ended up living with us, or why he started school there. I didn't like him. I remember him being very weird. But I mean, and also a 17-year-old or 18-year-old guy living in a house with 6 girls. It's all very creepy and vague. But I don't think he was creepy. I'm not accusing him of anything. If he's listening or, remembers any of this, I just think it was a very weird scenario. But I had to get up in the morning, and it was my job, my car, to you drive you and Morgan to the elementary school. But there were two other little girls that we had to pick up that
It
had
was like a
oh,
carpool,
it
a
was
weird
it
carpool.
was a carpool thing. And so some mornings they picked you up, but some mornings we had to pick them up. So that was four of you plus Susie, Tyra, Katie,
And Lenny.
and Lenny and me. So that's 9 kids that I had to get to school in the morning.
It's a lot of
And
kids.
I had to be there by
And
8:15.
so what was mom doing? Mom was just not getting out of bed at this point. I think
I
that there was
think
this is what her depression
she
really.
wasn't getting out of bed, and we only had one car that worked.
Oh,
And so I had to leave her at home. Either she had to drive us all 43 minutes into town and then wait with the car all day or else come back. And it didn't make any sense to do a 2-hour round trip. So
right.
I would take the car and I would go pick up those two weird little girls and then pick up, they weren't weird. It was just a weird scenario.
Angelina was what I remember. Angelina.
And then take you two to the elementary school, which was, I think, in town. And I must have had to come back and because I know 9 people weren't going to fit in one car, and then get Katie and Tyra and Lenny and Susie and me. And then when we got into town for the school, by the time we got there, I was always late, and my class was already starting. But Susie and Lenny were late and yelling, and so they would have me drop them off at school so they wouldn't be any more late. Then I'd go back and drop off Tyra and Katie to school so that they wouldn't be late. And then I'd get back, and I was an hour late for school every
Yeah.
single day. And I remember my Spanish teacher sitting me down and saying, well, you need to get more organized, and we need to talk about why you're so late every day, and we need to see what we can do. And I tried to explain it to him, and he told me, I just basically said, we were good at lying at this point. I just, well, my sister makes me late because she's never ready. And so one morning I remember saying to Katie and Tyra, I'm leaving at 7:30 on the dot. My Spanish teacher said, we need to leave at 7:30 on the dot, and I need to set some boundaries with whatever the phrase was for setting boundaries in those days. Put your foot down. And she was so mad. She was furious because I said I was going to leave without her. And Mom was furious because that meant she would have had to be stuck home with a mad Katie and a mad Tyra all day. So Mom said, no, you can't leave if she's not ready. And Katie went slower and slower and said, I need more mascara. And it was a lot. I mean, I was a
They
year,
give me anxiety, and I don't. But I lived it.
I was a year younger than Scout.
Yeah,
And so
you're older than Scout.
I was a year older than Scout. Scout's a year younger than I was. And just the idea, I mean, I wouldn't trust her to drive a cat somewhere,
I know.
much less at 88 miles an hour.
My sister's chicken and a cat.
Yeah, no kidding. And then we got there and we were poor. I mean, there was no money. And I'm surprised you say you don't remember being poor.
I don't remember being poor because I feel like there were so many cool things about that house that I remember. I remember picking blackberries for pies. Mom made a killer blackberry pie.
Yeah.
And there were blackberry bushes everywhere. I remember spending a lot of time at my friend Angelina's house.
When we
Again.
first got there, Mom was happy. I remember when I pulled up there with the cat and the chickens and everybody else, Mom was standing on the porch, and it was one of these upper loft, beautiful balconies, and the house was glorious. And I was like, okay, I can live here. This is fantastic. Yep. And Mom was standing on the porch singing John Denver. She was singing Take Me Home Country Roads.
It was a beautiful location,
and
and we had a lot of fun in that house also. I mean, we used to go swimming in that river, in the Road River, and we would jump off the rocks. And there was this, I don't know how we didn't die. There was a spot in the river where you could jump off a rock and it would suck you under and then spit you out like 100 feet down the river.
Okay, that sounds terrible.
Oh, it was like this, it was horrific. Like the thought of it now is like, what the fuck were we thinking? I was 10 years old and I was jumping off this rock. It would suck you under for a few minutes. You had to take a deep breath because you didn't know where it was going to spit you out. Oh, and then if you would go like far enough down the river to the slow part, there were, oh my God, what are the things leeches? There were leeches that would get all over you. Yeah. So, I mean, it was it was funny. Like you'd be like, oh my God, you got a leash on you. And you like pull leeches off your friends.
I do remember going fishing there. And I know that, Katie and Tyra used to go down there so they could smoke, and they would go smoke under the bridge so they could get away from Mom, and she wouldn't find them smoking. But
it was remote. I mean, I remember how far it was from everything. And I don't think we lived there very long. I want to say it was like 3 months.
We only lived there because I think we did first, last. we probably did the deposit. This is what she always did was first, last, and deposit. That's 3
Right.
months. And so the first month you live there, everything's good because you got first, last deposit. The second month, you don't pay the rent and they
People
start
start.
yelling at you. And the
Yeah.
third month, they give you 30 days notice.
Yeah.
And I don't remember. This is one of the only times in my life that I have a lot of it honestly blacked out because it was so stressful for me with the driving and the kids and having all these people around. And Susie and I stopped being friends or being close at all once she moved up there because we had been very good friends in school and we liked each other. But when we were forced to live together and she felt like she had no place to go, and she had it worse than we did in a lot of ways. She had no other home. Her home was,
When you guys lived in the basement. Yeah.
I don't remember. We all know I had a basement bedroom, but Katie and Tyra were mad that I got a bedroom and they had to live in the garage basement or something. And all I remember about that house is Katie and Tyra being angry with me and having a kind of a campaign of terror against me. And it was the first time that Katie and I had ever not gotten along. And it was
Yeah.
because she had Tyra on her side and they were really mad at me for whatever it was I had done. I don't know. Maybe I was a pain in the ass. I'm sure I was. Um, but it was very, very antagonistic and stressful and grumpy. And mom wanted my help because she went downhill very fast when she realized there was no money coming. And when she realized we had to move. So this whole thing, I should have proceeded this with this whole thing was predicated on she was going to get a lot of money from the house in Los Angeles. She was going to get like $100,000 or $70,000 or something. And that they owed her the money when the house sold or when it closed. And that was what the plan was for Oregon. But it kept falling through and kept getting postponed and the money just never came. And finally, by like Christmas, it became evident that it wasn't going to happen and there was no money and that she had really fucked up. That she had moved there with no support network. My father wasn't there. My aunt wasn't there. Her father wasn't there. We were 50 miles away from anything. And there was no money coming in and no way to earn money. You couldn't go do check scams and bad checks if there was only one grocery store in town.
Right.
You couldn't scam doctor's offices if there were no doctor's offices. There was literally no backup. There was no saving.
I remember, and I think that this was at this house also, that there was some sort of food pantry or a church. I remember like shopping for food and having to be great.
Yeah, see, I don't remember that. I do remember. Um, so what I do remember is this is the house, and I guess I'm going to admit to illegal things here and some of my bad past, but I assume the statute of limitations
Limitations has
And
passed.
also, I really try hard to be a good example and a moral example. And I take my role as scoutmaster and mother and mentor very seriously as trying to be a good person. I'm not going to say that I'm the most ethical person of all time, but I don't cheat on my husband. I don't lie much. I might lie to some people once in a while, the same way everybody does. But I'm not a goody two shoes, but I really try hard to be opposite of what my mother was. And I certainly don't cheat people. That's one of the things that has always been, one of my core bedrock things is I don't cheat people. I don't steal. But at this point, we were desperate. And I don't think we had anything. I don't think we had any money. We didn't have the rent coming in. And my mother made me, persuaded me, told me to, however you want to say it. I wrecked my car for the insurance money. The car was not working well. It wasn't a great car to begin with. I think it needed work. And she had me drive it into the river and smash it and say that the brakes had failed.
I remember that.
So that,
I remember you were in an accident and
Yes.
mom was not upset about it.
right, I was in an accident. And I remember Lenny and Susie both accusing me of doing it on purpose because they could see that there was no way that could have happened and that the brakes hadn't gone out. And I remember being so angry and so defensive and saying, how dare you accuse me of something like that? And how dare you, blah, blah, blah. But I think we got, I don't know, the ungodly sum of like $2,500 or $3,000 for the car. And that let us eat And it was 3 weeks before Christmas or something. And we ended up moving into another house, which
In
was
Talent, Oregon.
Talent. And it was a tiny, small, shitty little rental, which is something we have never done before.
Yeah, that was a tiny house.
We,
I do
ne-
remember that.
we never lived in.
This tiny house was also on a large lot of land.
I don't remember anything about that house. I don't remember layout. I don't remember where it was. I don't remember where it went to school. I had blacked out that entire thing. And it is the only part of our whole screwed up childhood that I blacked out. And I don't know whether it was because there was so much trauma and abuse and I don't remember it, or whether it was just kind of a blur because we were only there for a month or two. But I know that by January, we were back in LA.
Well, I went to school in that house, and I went to school in that house for what, 3 or 4 weeks, I guess.
Did you have to,
'Cause I remember
did you have to switch schools?
I had to switch schools. I switched schools from whatever school I was in Rouge to
Right.
a new school in Talent. And I remember this very specifically because Katie and Tyron decided to give me a haircut before the first day of school.
Wow.
And that is when they cut my hair so short that I looked like Rod Stewart. Remember
Wow.
when I had that horrific haircut?
I remember nothing about any of this.
Oh my God. They gave me the worst fucking haircut of my life. And it was like my back to school haircut. Or they gave me a haircut and I had to go get it fixed. And they had to fix it. And that's when it had to be cut so short.
Wow.
So I started school at this new school and my hair was super short. So I was like this weird, funky little girl, 10, 11 years old and with a horrific haircut. And thankfully we weren't there very long.
I think Susie and I were able to stay at the same high school. I don't remember what happened to Lenny. I think maybe Lenny stayed in Oregon. But what happened in January? So we had moved there in August, and by
I
January,
will tell you, this is also the house. This is the house where I had the puppy. When Mom was a little girl, she had a dog named Timmy, was a terrier of
an
some sort.
Airedale,
And I don't think it was an Airedale though. Nora was telling me it
a
was some sort
wire-haired
of-
terrier.
It was a wire-haired terrier. But I had it in my mind that Timmy was an Airedale, and I always wanted an Airedale. That was the dog that I wanted. So we found somebody who was breeding Airedales, and Mom got me an Airedale, and I named it Timmy. And I had Timmy for roughly 36 hours before Timmy took off into the field behind our house and was never seen again.
Yeah.
And that was horrific, and I cried, and I was sad. And there's a movie that came out in the 80s. It's called Funny Farm, with Chevy Chase. And there's a scene in the movie where once in a while they see a dog running through the field by their house, and that's my dog. So now that was always what we thought about. There's Timmy running through the field, But so Timmy was gone. So I went through animals, so quickly. Why would anyone do an animal? But anyway, I digress.
I don't think it was you, frankly. So all I remember is that at some point, Mom decided that she couldn't do this anymore, that she needed to go back to LA to get the money, that she needed to go figure out the money from the house, and that we needed to be in LA. Okay, at one point, this is how weird things were. It seems like kind of a fever dream, that we needed a new car after when Mom wrecked the one for the insurance money. We had no car. And Mom had a guy she knew in LA who would give her a car on credit, or basically just give her a car. But I had to go get it. And so she sent Katie and me to LA in a private plane.
What?
It was some guy had a private plane that was like 4 seats.
I've never heard this.
And Katie and I had to get in the plane, and we rode in the back of this private plane from Oregon to LA. And not like a private jet. This was like a little 4-seater thing. And I don't remember why we were doing it, how she hooked up with this person, what the deal was. I don't know how we got from the airport, but I do remember the plane ride being terrifying. It was something with the Yellow Jackets. Like, we're flying over the Cascades in this 4-seater private plane, and we couldn't hear anything because it was so loud. And it was just this really long, terrifying flight. And then we got there, and her friend Jim fixed us up with a Subaru, and we must have driven back up to Oregon, and then came and got all of you. And then we all got back home, and I don't know how we got the furniture. I don't know how any of it worked, but somehow
I remember being in a hotel. So we were in a hotel at this point, and I feel like this is the time that we were in a hotel in LA, and we were in a hotel, and I need to Google the date of it, but it was the
day
date
the
that
challenge
challenge
exploded. It was January 20th or 21st of 1986. And I
Everybody
remember
in
that.
America was in school when the Challenger exploded.
I
And we were in a hotel. I was driving through McDonald's with mom at that time, and the lady said, "Oh my god, the Challenger exploded."
Oh, I was back in the hotel, and it wasn't Morgan will be very adamant about this. It was not a hotel. It was a motel, and she says it was a hooker motel. And
From
I don't remember whether it was a hooker motel, but Morgan talks about this time because I think this was really kind of the low point. This was the
so
first
this was
time.
January 28th, 1986.
This is the first time we'd ever been homeless,
Yeah.
and it was the first time we'd ever been in a hotel, living in a hotel, and we had no place to go until mom.
And I think we had a couple of rooms though, because there were so many of us.
Right, because Susie was in the room with us. She couldn't go back to her parents.
I feel like it was you and Katie and Tyra and Susie and me and mom and Morgan.
Tyra and Katie went off to Tyra's house for a while to get out of the room. And I remember that day because, and this has happened every time since then, whenever I move, I get deathly ill, just completely sick. And I mean, go figure. And I was in the room with the worst flu I've ever had, like stomach flu and barfing and everything. And the Challenger came on. And one of the reasons I remember is because the night before that, I'd gone out with my friends from high school because the ones from LA that I'd missed. And I ended up making out with one of them, a guy, obviously. I'm not going to say who it was, but it was like the first time I had ever.
And Josh.
It wasn't.
Oh, it wasn't Josh. Okay.
No, it was the other one. But anyway,
Oh my God, Chris.
can you hush? What about, I don't want to say, shush, just once.
And I know he
first time-
listens.
Okay, it was truly the first time I'd ever kissed anybody. And
Oh my God.
and honestly, I liked his best friend, not him, and he knew that. And he liked Susie, and I liked his best friend, and so it was a whole mess. But it was like all of a sudden, I came from this disaster in Oregon back to I've got
Friends.
a guy that I like. I've got another guy that I kind of made out with. I've got a best friend here. There's a whole love triangle thing going, and this is one of the few things that mom did that really impressed me. Susie and I went and tried to go back to school, and they said, you can't. Once you leave the magnet program, you're out. And mom said, no, that wasn't their fault. They were only gone 3 or 4 months. And they said, no, you can only get into a magnet program in, 10th grade when you start. You have to go through the whole program. You can't leave after a semester. And mom went to the school board, and she found somebody on the school board and got their phone number and had them intervene and had them put us back into school. And
Well, in a hotel.
while we were living in a hotel so that we could
Wow.
start going to school from the hotel. And then those boys came pick us up and drive us to school and get us there. And
Wow.
I mean, within a couple of weeks, we were in another rental house somehow.
So from that, it was that point we moved to the house on Morrison Street.
Right. And at
With
that
the
point, yeah. And at that point, we didn't, I mean, she never got the money from the house in LA. She never got the money from selling the house. And I think the house eventually went into foreclosure. All that time, money, energy, and everything else. And it was just lost. But
Yeah.
so we moved back to LA to get all of the money from this scam or whatever it was she was pulling. And it didn't work. But at least we were back in LA where if we were starving, we could go to Aunt Maggie's house and say,
Or we could call Dad.
we could call that. We wouldn't.
Yeah.
I don't think in my entire life that I ever called Dad and told him the truth and said, well, hungry.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't really have a relationship with him at that point. I mean,
Right. I would
didn't have
never have admitted that to him. But
Yeah.
and I would never have told Aunt Maggie we were hungry because she would have yelled at us and said, why didn't you guys tell me? And what's going on with you guys? And then it would have been a thing where we had to call grandpa. And it would have been,
I can remember spending lots of time at Aunt Maggie's house, though.
yes.
I remember being dropped off there for a weekend, and it was like, there's food here. And little Maggie had friends. Matt had friends that I loved. We ran around. We had the best time ever. And that was like my home. Because
Right.
it was a home that had always been there.
But it was also
I felt
clear,
safe.
though, that she didn't want to feed poor little kid all the time.
No, but she would see me.
She would
Like,
feed,
I
right,
was
right.
fine.
She would feed
was
one
my
kid at a
stress.
time. But when we all showed up hungry, she's like, look,
It's too much.
it's too much. I can't feed 4 of you all the time, especially if you're all going to go and take all my TV dinners,
I mean, she would, but it was like one night at a time. But like, mom would sometimes drop me off there for like 3 or 4 days.
Right. Oh, well, lucky you. At least you got a break.
Yeah.
Um,
A lot.
but out of all that, I mean, so that's where we ended up. And that's kind of, this is that was one of the weirdest, most chaotic things in all of
The Oregon experience is one of those things when people say, oh, you look, whenever Oregon comes up, I always say, oh my God, I lived in Oregon as a kid. I loved Oregon. It was so pretty. Like, oh, where did you live? I'm like, oh, I lived in Medford and I lived outside of, in Talent. And they were like, how long did you live there? I'm like, and in my head, I'm thinking, I must have lived there a couple of years, not
Right.
3 months total for both houses.
Right. And I mean, things going on like when I was at the high school, the boys' football team went to the state championship. And I didn't know what a big deal that was because I went to this weird zoo magnet high school where they obviously didn't have a football team. But for your school to win the state champion or go to state champion was huge. It was a
That's a big
big
deal.
deal. And I kind of wish I could have been a part of that and been friends there and liked people there and gotten to connect to people. But I mean, it was such a blur. It was just so out of it. And I was so overwhelmed. There was one guy I talked to that I was sort of friends with and a couple of girls I remember having conversations with, but I never managed to. It takes longer than that to connect.
I will say one thing we did in Oregon that I absolutely loved that mom introduced us to was the Asheville Shakespeare Festival.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Ashland, sorry, the
Yeah.
Ashland,
Yeah.
Ashland, Oregon had this incredible Shakespeare festival. And I remember going for a weekend, or I don't know if it was like just one full day, but there was a woman, and I'll never forget it. I was 10 years old, and she was in a unicorn costume.
No, that's my memory. How do you
What?
remember that?
I was with you.
That was the most incredible. It was a solid blue.
It's your memory. We were together. We had the same
I don't
memory.
remember. I
Yeah.
remember it being for a parade. I thought it was. I was going to say it was the. I was going to say I remember the Halloween parade in Ashland. My favorite memory is
It was the
the
Ashland
uniform.
Shakespeare Festival.
Okay, but whatever it was, whether it was, I thought it was Halloween. But either way, we saw this parade, and the girl was in a cat suit, a blue satin cat suit.
Yep.
But somehow she was also a unicorn.
I don't know. She just had the most incredible makeup, and she had this beautiful like body of like a ballerina dancer, and she just had this incredible headdress.
The tail. It was the
oh,
most beautiful costume.
honestly,
It was the most beautiful costume I've ever seen. It's funny
yeah.
that,
To this day,
40 years
I
later,
still
you mentioned Ashland, and that's what we remember.
I know. And it's so funny how like, the kids these days are very into core memories.
Right.
And that is one of my core memories of Oregon was this beautiful woman at an Ashland Shakespeare Festival.
Mine too. I mean, that costume, it must have been something. I wonder if we saw it now, if we'd be like, whatever. But
I know.
it was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And
So we ended up in Sherman Oaks, California. And we ended up in a house that again had a ridiculously large yard. It had a swimming pool in the backyard. And it was close enough to the Sherman Oaks Galleria that we could walk there.
well, I think we can get into what happened on Morrison Street and the rest of it in next time. But I think this is an interesting thing because this was kind of, for me at least, before I left, because I left home at 18 or 19. So I only had another 2 years there. This was not the absolute worst thing that ever happened to me, but it was kind of the worst that we were as a family. I mean,
I think that this was like, I think that the Oregon situation for you was one of the things that kind of started you thinking, I don't want to be in this family forever. And this isn't for me.
not only that, it started me thinking that I couldn't protect you guys anymore. I think even mom got scared because she realized that once she moved away from, she didn't want anybody to find out how bad things were. But once you move away from all support networks, there's no support network.
Right.
You might want to hide what you're doing from people to keep them from, taking your kids away or whatever it is. But man, there's no support network when you're out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. I mean, it's it's that whole thing that, the whole fuck around and find out.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that was, what we did end up, the Adirondacks were like this too later, but we created our own support network there and we were older and we could figure out. By that point, I think we were never going to do that again. That was my, I'm never going to do this again moment.
Right. I've had it. I'm done. This is not happening to me again.
I'm not going to be wrecking cars for her. I'm not going to be on the bandwagon with this. This is me looking for an exit. When we moved back to California, the Challenger, it was January, and I was going to graduate in June, and that was it. I was going to go off to college and go do my thing. So,
Well, a little foreshadowing. I mean, you had another year or two left of prom. I was there for another 6 years. And Oregon for me is a blip on the radar as far as when I started being mom's helper
right,
with
right.
things. And
I think that was the problem is that if I wasn't going to help, well, somebody had to. And I think Katie took
right.
over for a while. I think Katie was,
I think she just trickled down
yeah,
trickled down the list of kids that would help
yeah,
her. It was, you were kind of like, I'm done. This was bullshit. I hated it.
yeah,
I felt like to my friends, I don't like the way it made me feel as a person.
yeah.
I mean, 40 years later, you're still racked with guilt about it.
Well, not only, I mean, yes, but also
It's not racked with guilt. That's not the
I
right
don't want,
word.
and this is going to sound really silly, but I don't want people to judge me and who I am now on the fact that I committed a crime when I was 16 and was forced by my mother to do it. Because, I mean, kids do get convicted of crimes when they're 16.
Okay, if they're gonna be mad at you about that, wait till they hear what happens to me in Australia.
I know, but also you think about these kids. Okay, and we're probably way over time here, but I want to talk about one thing. And you think about these kids who are 16 who get convicted of crimes and go to jail for them.
Right.
And there was never a chance that was going to happen to us. And I am,
You were a 6-year-old white kid. That was never
well,
happened to you.
that's what I was going to say. A lot of this stuff is absolute. Mom is the absolute worst possible version of white woman privilege.
Or the best version, depending on how you look at it.
Yes, exactly. The kind that gets away with the most stuff either way. And, Sora was, and I talk about this a lot. He's helping me edit my book and we're reading some stuff. And we had a friend of the family. His name was Kenny. And he was a young Black guy who helped my mom. And it is relevant that he's Black. That's why I'm mentioning it. He helped my mom with errands and helped drive us places every once in a while. And he was around a lot. But he thought my mother was fantastic. And he thought she was funny as hell. And actually, after she won on Sale of the Century, he said, well, hell, I can do that. And he went and won a truck on Wheel of Fortune, which,
Oh my God. And he went on Wheel of Fortune and he won the truck and they brought his family out and we were the family. And Pat Sajak said to him, are you sure we have the right family? This young Black guy and these 4 little blonde girls and this old white lady, 40-year-old white lady come out. Pat Sajak and Vanna White were so confused. It was so funny.
it was. And also, Kenny had come from Houston with us when we moved from Houston. He had kind of followed us out there, or maybe he knew my mom was going to be out there and that she was easy pickings for a good paycheck whenever he needed a couple of odd jobs. And he was always willing to, you know, be ethically challenged with her whenever she needed somebody to help
Right.
skate some stuff. But one of the things she would do is she would go into a pharmacy and she knew that they were going to follow, that the security was going to follow Kenny around the pharmacy. And Kenny would never do anything illegal and he would never steal anything. In a million years, he would never just go and steal. But while the security guard and the manager were following Kenny around the pharmacy, Mom would be scooping things into her purse, just
Good Lord.
throwing shit into her bag anytime she wanted, because she knew that they were never even going to possibly look at her.
What an asshole.
I know. I
She
know.
was such an asshole.
And I mean, obviously that brings up all sorts of things about putting him in trouble and everything else, but he wasn't. He literally just walked into the store and she used him as a decoy. And the privilege that she had where she could talk herself out of any situation, she used to fake heart attacks every time she was arrested or angina or,
I know.
I mean, any time that a cop would question her, she would do, and they talk about, white woman tears. My mother would cry. She would cry and talk about her husband who left her and who cheated on her and her 4 children. And she was so poor and she had never done anything like this. And she's so ashamed. And oh my God, I think I'm having heart palpitations. And she would walk out.
She reminds me of the mom from Pride and Prejudice.
Oh, yes. That's yes. That's probably why I hate the mom of Pride and Prejudice. My 4 daughters are just
Right.
the
Her
married.
daughter. My nerves.
She would have been so happy if I had married a billionaire.
Okay.
And so the privilege that came with all of this, in that, yes, we got evicted from these houses, but it took way longer than it would have taken anybody else to get evicted.
For sure.
And yes, she could write checks at the grocery store 5, 6, 8, 10 times because nobody was looking at her. Nobody was looking her name up on the bad checklist like they would have if she were Black or if she were a guy or if she were, anything. And anytime she got in trouble, she would just cry. And I swear to God, they would let her go.
I will say that I am also very good at that.
Yes.
And that whenever I would get a ticket growing up, like when I was older and driving and, burst into tears. And that would be my whole thing. Oh my God. And there was always a story. And even to this day, in the back of my mind, I always have a story ready of why I'm speeding and what I'm going to say to the man to get out of it. And it's just never been an issue for me because I know that I can talk my way out of anything.
Right. And there is a sense of that's really fucked up. That's really, and that we are abusing this. But I'm also very good at using this to raise my voice. That's one of the things that I do on Facebook. That's one of the things that I'm absolutely passionate about is talking about people who don't have this privilege.
And using your white privilege to help.
Right. And you
I think that's also important. I think that recognizing that you have this privilege is the first step to helping other people who don't have them.
Right. And I don't know whether Mom would have ever accepted. She was obviously a really liberal, out there kind of hippie in her mentality. But I don't think she ever would have called that white privilege. She would have just said, that's just the way the world works. There's racism. People are racist and people are jerks and you want to use their own prejudices against them. And now we've come to use that same terminology as, well, yeah, you use the privilege that you have to raise up other voices instead of just taking advantage of. Mom used it to take advantage of as much as she could for herself. And she certainly never used it to help others. I mean, she did to some degree where she did help Susie. She did help Tyra. She did help Kenny. She did help Lenny. But it wasn't because she was using her privilege to do that. It was just because she was like, sure, they can come along for the ride. Why not?
Or just along for the ride at that point. It was an intentional, I'm going to use this to help.
Yep. And I don't know that that's what I do with my writing isn't intentional anything else. But I do feel like we have benefited from this our entire life, this concept of we can get away with anything. And, there's no reason we should be able to get away with anything. And I think it's important to remember that not everybody can.
Well, I will say that I do try to teach my daughter and her friends how to get away with things. So I think that that's me helping them, even though they're all white girl. But I do try to pass it along and teach them some of the things I've, learned.
I think,
2 nights ago, we went to the rodeo. Okay. It's just a stupid little example. 2 nights ago, we went to the rodeo. We went to saw Brooks and Dunn. It was the best night of my life. It's such a good time. And we're leaving the rodeo. We're going to get in line for something. Everybody's waiting in these super long ass lines.
I hate
And I was like, guys, keep going. Go to the end of the line. And there's going to be a shorter line. Like everybody just kind of stops and just assumes that that's what you have to do is wait in line. So we went all the way around and there's a line with 2 people in it.
Right.
And they're like, how did you find this? I'm like, because you don't do what everybody else does. You get shit done. You do things your own way. You don't follow the crowd. I don't know if that's exactly what you're talking about.
But here's the thing with that. Would there have been people who were stopped as they were walking to the front?
I don't know. But I showed up with 3, 2 super cute girls and a cute little white guy who was with us. So
right. And
we all show up.
It takes a lot of, and there is
a man next to me said, wow, you really looked out on that, didn't you? And I was like, well, you didn't fucking stand. Like this line was open. You could have gotten in this line. Nobody expects that kind of stuff to happen to them. So they don't get in good line. They expect to wait in line. And I don't ever expect to wait in line.
And I think there is a sense of, yes, you should take young girls and teach them to be assertive. You should teach them that they can get away with shit and that they should have the confidence and the assertiveness to speak their piece and do what they need to get ahead but it should come with the expectation and the responsibility of protecting people that can't get that done and the expectation that you're bringing other people along for the ride. And, I hate to quote J.K. Rowling because of what an asshole she turned out to be, but there is there is a thing in Harry Potter where Ginny Weasley says, it turns out from watching, her brothers, she says, if you just have enough nerve, you can get away with anything. And I'm like, oh, for sure. That's what watching Mom, like, I can get away with anything. Is that something that you want to teach people? I don't know. but it's a
I
thing.
teach my daughters that all the time. And they always will like randomly text our little family chat and you're like, I pulled a mom today. I got away with this, or I totally hacked the system, or I worked the system. Like mom would have been so proud of me. Mom, you'd be so proud of me. I worked the system today.
Do you know?
But when they were little, they would get irritated when I would work the system. But now that they're older and they're learning how to do it themselves, it's kind of like a rite of
Do you
passage.
know how mad I am that Sawyer doesn't know how to do taxes and get the all refunded and he had to come to me? I'm like, dude, you should not be paying any taxes. You made $11,000 last year. What are you
Yeah.
doing? And how do you not know this at 24? Let's get you the refund. And I'm like, how do you not know how to work a system here?
Yeah, you got to work a system. I think that on episode 7, we're going to talk about working the system.
Yeah,
We're going to have a
I
lesson on
think
working.
that's, yeah, there's a lot we can do. We can teach
So I
kids.
think we got to wrap this one up
Yeah.
for people who are driving their car about I don't know. So next week, I think we're going to talk a little bit about some things that happened in this house in Sherman Oaks that are kind of uncomfortable to talk about. It's not going to be super happy, cheerful the whole episode.
No, but I will say this, and I want to make sure that everybody knows. One of our sisters has said that we are not, I can't remember, diving deep, or that we're sugarcoating things. There are some really bad things in these stories and in our bad childhood that we are not talking about, and it is deliberate. And I think in one episode we will dive deep into that, but I want it to be done thoughtfully, with care, and with the understanding that anybody listening knows what they're getting into and is prepared for it. Because I don't want to just throw that kind of stuff out there and just be like, hey, we're going to talk about this in a podcast that's kind of light and chipper.
Right.
You know? And so, yeah, we can dive into some of the stuff, which is still not
it's not the bad stuff, but there is, just as a pre-warning, there are some things that happen in the next episode with a grown man who's slightly famous that tries to take advantage of one of our sisters.
Yeah.
So we'll get into that on the next episode. And I think it's an important one. I think that, these things need to be talked about. Speaking of white privilege.
Yeah.
This is one of the most privileged men in America. So.
Yeah. Well, not now. Now there's so many.
Not now. Now he's just son of a bitch.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for listening to Forever Wild.
If you enjoyed this episode, let us know. Leave us a review, find Meagan on Facebook, or share it with someone who loves a good story.
We would love to hear from you. And we really would. I'm not getting enough, feedback on what people like and don't like. And I would love to see some reviews so that I know what we're doing right. And send us your stories, your questions, your thoughts. Would like to hear more about.
And I do love the text messages I get from those of you who are listening to this with the little tidbits that you liked and didn't like. And I am sharing them with Meagan, and I think they're so fun.
Yeah.
But until next time, stay wild.
Bye.